Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, Mexico is deploying thousands of troops to the U.S. Mexico border to help with the influx of migrants. It was supposed to happen today, but the plan is now delayed. KPBS went to the border to find out what's happening. Plus, are you interested in owning a business? Advice is right around the corner in City Heights, where you can catch the Business Expo.
Hi, I'm Beth Accomando, and we are going to go inside Audrey 2 to find out how you bring a carnivorous plant to life. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Ah!
Good evening. It's Friday, June 28th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma, filling in for Ebony Monet. 15,000 troops from the newly formed Mexican National Guard were supposed to begin patrolling the Mexican-U.S. border in Tijuana today. But as KPBS's Max Rivlin-Nadler reports, the National Guard has yet to begin operating there.
Members of the Mexican National Guard were reportedly supposed to begin operations today in Tijuana, but that day has been moved to Sunday to coordinate with the presidents of Mexico's launch of the National Guard from Mexico City, because this is a brand new branch of the Mexican Armed Forces. They're waiting until July 1st, which is their official start date. I spoke with a federal police officer this morning just across the border here, and he confirmed to me that several members of the National Guard, between 300 and 500, were flowing into the city to begin enforcement operations on Sunday. What those enforcement operations will look like, well, we don't really know at this point. Members of the Mexican military were stationed near the border this morning, but Mexican federal police told KPBS that they're not connected to the contingent of National Guard set to patrol the border. They said that federal police will be working with the National Guard over the next coming weeks. It's unclear what exactly the National Guard will be doing in Tijuana. Officials have said they will be both working to provide safety for migrants who are waiting out their asylum claims in Mexico and also working to drive down Tijuana's skyrocketing murder rate. On Monday, Mexican Army troops raided a shelter near the border in Playas de Tijuana and demanded identification from migrants. It represents a new role for the Mexican Army when it comes to the migrant crisis. Just last week, Mexican troops stopped a group of people from crossing the Rio Grande into the United States, just days before a father and daughter from Central America drowned in the river. I also spoke today with Nicole Ramos, a human rights lawyer here in Tijuana, and she told me that federal police have definitely stepped up enforcement and oversight of both migrants south of the border and legal assistants and lawyers who have come down to assist them in their asylum claims, as a sign that the policy down here is definitely changing when it comes to how the Mexican government is dealing with the massive migrants who are coming through its southern border and trying to reach the United States. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
The defense finishes presenting its case for Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher. Gallagher is accused of multiple war crimes, including murdering an ISIS prisoner while deployed in Iraq. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh has been covering this case for 2 weeks. Steve, what's the update?
So that's right, Amitha. The defense rested its case today on Friday in the trial of SEAL Chief Eddie Gallagher. So closing arguments will begin on Monday in this case. A panel of 7 will have to decide which SEALs to believe, either medic Corey Scott or Chief Miller, who say they saw Gallagher stab a wounded detainee in Iraq, or a Marine raider who said he saw no stab wounds on the body. The defense last witness in this case was the highest-ranking SEAL in Iraq in 2017. Lieutenant Commander Robert Briss says he began hearing complaints from Gallagher's platoon shortly after they got back from Iraq in September of 2018. First, these were allegations of things like petty theft, stealing Red Bull and the like. And then there were complaints about his tactics, and then concern over whether or not he would receive the Silver Star for what he had done in Iraq. Brish says that this went on for months. These guys were complaining, but seemed unwilling to come forward with something that would really take it to the next level, he testified. And then Brish said when he told Chief Craig Miller that there would be no investigation, Brish says that Miller blurted out, "Eddie stabbed a prisoner." Now, this is in April, nearly a year after the detainee died in Iraq. The defense contends this is a very junior platoon out to get its hard-charging chief. Prosecutors pointed out that Most of these people received high marks both from Gallagher and from Brish after they made these allegations. So closing arguments begin on Monday. This could be wrapped up by the end of the day on Monday. From Naval Base San Diego, Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Thank you, Steve. District elections could lead to a new crop of candidates across San Diego County next year. The change in how council members are elected leading to new pushes to draft candidates, especially from minority communities. In part 2 of her series, KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregerser visits one city where that's happening.
It's early evening on the busy Main Street in El Cajon, and a group of men are sitting around playing checkers and cards in a Middle Eastern restaurant. In a small storage room behind the restaurant, a group is gathered, but they're not playing games. They spread bus maps out on the table and speak in Arabic about what they want to see in the city's climate action plan. Mohammed Tuama is running the meeting. He moved from Iraq to El Cajon 10 years ago and now is very involved in local politics. He says the switch to district elections helped spur the Middle Eastern community to get involved in the districting process.
It was just like an achievement for us to, from community that is not involved to a community that is actually involved.
District elections are meant to increase diversity on city councils by allowing minority communities to elect someone from their neighborhood. Now, Tuama and others are preparing for the November 2020 election. That's when his district, which contains a big chunk of the Middle Eastern community, will get to vote on its first council member.
We're welcoming anyone who, even if it's not from our community, but someone who cares. But we're looking for someone from our community.
El Cajon is one of 5 local cities that have switched to district elections, but have not seen a boost in diversity on their city councils. But it may be too soon to make that call. That's because in all 5 of those cities, the first district election was only last year. They may need more time and more elections to diversify, and all 5 will have their next chance in 2020. In El Cajon, Tuama says his community is still looking for a candidate.
We have someone, but we're trying to see if that person can be more involved, because we don't really. It's not only about someone from our community, but we need someone who's really knowledgeable.
If their candidate is a Democrat, they may have some help.
It's a game changer in many of the smaller cities.
Will Rodriguez Kennedy is chair of the San Diego County Democratic Party. He says district elections not only increase diversity, they also largely help Democrats.
Moving to district elections is more representative. It also means that communities of color and other marginalized communities will have more of a vote share in terms of their districts, which is obviously better for everyone, but also better for the Democratic Party.
Although all local city council seats are nonpartisan, Rodriguez Kennedy says in reality it doesn't actually play out that way. And part of the Democratic Party's strategy will be focusing on these smaller cities in the next election. That, he hopes, will gain Democrats more seats on the local transit agency, Sandag.
Which means we need to start paying attention and investing in smaller cities in the north and the east.
But do minority voters always vote as a bloc? That assumption is often true, though not always, according to Zoltan Heinel, a political science professor at UC San Diego. He calls this racially polarized voting.
African Americans are in many ways the most polarized voting bloc. So they tend to vote overwhelmingly liberal, Democratic, whereas whites tend to vote more Republican and conservative. And so there's a big gap, even at the local level, between the preferences of African Americans and the preferences of whites in most circumstances. There's often a smaller gap between the preferences of Latinos and Asian Americans on one hand, and white American preferences in terms of the vote.
And he says it's often true that minority groups are more likely to vote for Democrats.
Republicans who are Latino or African American or Asian American typically get very few Black or Latino or Asian American votes.
And he adds, if maps are drawn where minorities are too concentrated in 1 or 2 districts, it may actually limit the chance to elect even more diverse councils.
Essentially, those districts will be the overwhelmingly liberal districts, and then you might actually elect more conservative Republicans. And if you're a minority and you're liberal, that may or may not be a good thing.
But in El Cajon, Mohamed Tuama's focus is getting just one person from his community elected. He says there are some projects he wants to see tackled. For example, making El Cajon more walkable and using more roundabouts, which people from the Middle East are used to.
Back home, we all have roundabouts because it keeps cars moving, and that would use a lot of gas emission. It was complicated for local community to accept roundabouts because they never drove in a roundabout. So we actually had to show a video of how a roundabout works.
He says if they had a council person from the Middle East, they wouldn't have to explain. That person would just understand what they're talking about. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
The first ever City Heights Business Expo is this Saturday. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar tells us what you can expect from the event.
New or aspiring business owners can find services and resources from local organizations. The event will also feature local small businesses that receive technical and financial assistance from area nonprofits. Rosie Sanchez Ulloa from the City Heights Community Development Corporation says aspiring entrepreneurs will be able to get on-the-spot advice about their ventures.
Even if they're not launched yet, and if they are ready to start, they can come here and actually apply for a microloan here on site. They can fill out applications. They can talk to a provider about how much launch they would need and how much capital they would need to launch, and they can get that orientation.
The event is free and will take place from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Fair at 44 in City Heights. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
Little Shop of Horrors began life as a Roger Corman B-movie in the 1960s. It grew into a stage musical in the 80s and now has temporary roots at the New Village Arts Theater. KPBS Arts reporter Beth Accomando went behind the scenes to find out how you bring a carnivorous plant to life.
What glows in the dark has big pointy teeth, lots of purple warts, and ever-growing tendrils.
This is my spaceship. It's just the pod, the thing that brought me here to this planet. I grew inside of it, and now I'm finally out.
Out and ravenous. Ebony Muse takes over the stage as the carnivorous plant Audrey 2 in the musical Little Shop of Horrors at New Village Arts.
Feed me! This is the mouth right here. So whenever I eat anybody, we all grab them, I grab them, bring them in, pod closes, and they're gone.
The play's director, A.J. Knox, had a vision of Audrey 2 as an actress singing on stage, which is very different from how the mutant plant raised by the befuddled shop clerk Seymour is usually depicted.
Ebony has just this powerhouse voice. It, shakes the rafters every time she sings.
She's USDA proud for my solitaire.
We are having fun with some of the expectations that were challenging with this show.
Hi, I'm Madison Mellon, and I'm the puppet designer for Little Shop of Horrors at NBA.
Madison Mellon created a series of puppets for the show, starting with baby Audrey 2.
Yeah, so there are a couple different things she can do. The first thing is when Seymour's holding her and she needs to wilt, there's a little trick where now she's all wilted, and it's just this little pull ring in the back that's attached to each of the leaves.
How come it's fainting all the time?
Oh, I told you, it's been giving me trouble. It just wilts like this.
But the real fun thing she can do is you can put your hand up, and there's sort of a stem all coiled up in there. And then she can grow all the way up and sort of take her little bow. And this one is really fun because not only is it sort of a hand puppet like this one, but it also has this whole fake arm. And so it's a fun little gag.
Those two stages of Audrey 2 are familiar to audiences, but not the adult plant.
So this is really sort of our new vision for this production. We really wanted to go in an entirely different direction, really embracing the sort of sci-fi B-movie element of combining the pod with a human actor. It's a really interesting combination, I would say, of both design in terms of how it's going to look, but then also kind of designing it on a technical level of how is it actually going to support itself and move.
Bringing Audrey 2 to vivid life involved a team of artists so that costume, puppetry, and performance could all combine to create a space queen hell-bent on world domination, one human at a time. Amanda Quivy designed Audrey 2's extravagant Vegas showgirl-style costume.
I went and did a lot of research on carnivorous plants. Like, we've got a little bit of Venus flytrap kind of effect going on here. Things like pitcher plants or sundew plants, just all the things that eat insects in the wild, trying to incorporate the plant elements into the Space Queen idea.
Well, the cape makes me feel fabulous. Audrey 2 is all about being big and unnecessary, and I hit people in the face with the cape, so it's all about this one right here. This is my favorite part.
We wanted her to take over the stage, you know, so that as she opens up and as the play continues on, more and more of her just attaches itself. I love the arm, hand sort of things coming over the cash register. And into that, too, we added the urchins into her color scheme so that they could become part of her in the pod.
There's me plus my giant costume, and then I have 3 urchins behind me sometimes, and the 4 of us have to fit in here, plus, you know, the stagehands operating the Audrey doors over here, and then we have another panel that sits back here that's like these side panels, so sometimes that's in the way, too. So it's just a lot of things going on.
Much of the design and spirit of this production comes from Knox's love of B horror movies.
I really wanted to pay tribute to those old B movies, which the original Little Shop was a B movie.
New Village Arts serves up an audaciously inventive and lethal Little Shop of Horrors.
We have 2 really, really good death scenes in this show, so you're gonna love it. We get claps for them.
Spoiler alert, succumbing to an alien invasion has never been this much fun. Little Shop of Horrors will be playing at New Village Arts through August 4th. I'm Beth Accomando, KPBS News!
This weekend, the San Diego nonprofit Transcendence Youth Arts Project is hosting its annual dance concert. KPBS reporter Milena Spitzer went to see how the program is impacting the city's underserved youth.
Well, I wanted to give a shout out to Jen because, like, ever since she's came here, she's like helped me like boost up my confidence and all that. So I want to thank her for that because she made me proud of myself. So.
After the dress rehearsal, this group of teenagers takes turns giving shout outs to each other to acknowledge how far they've come. The teens are part of the Transcendence Create program that brings together students from underserved communities throughout San Diego to train with renowned choreographers and artists in residence. The goal, says Transcendence Executive Artistic Director Kat Corral, is much more than teaching dance.
The mission of Transcendence is to guide our students to transcend barriers, expand their ambitions, and create positive social change through dance and performance.
I remember we were going to have a math test and I was scared.
Students like Carolina Olea, a 19-year-old who struggled with anxiety and depression before she came to the program 3 years ago. She says the leadership training, mentoring, and supportive community at Transcendence has helped her find confidence.
And I'm so happy I did because now I've been here for 3 years, and all those 3 years have taught me so much about myself, about how to grow, how to love myself, how to love others.
Now Olea says her Transcendence family is bringing that love to San Diego through a performance focused on creating a culture of kindness.
We keep teaching people new things when they come to our shows, and I think that's really important. We're able to touch people's hearts with our stories and have them relate to us because we know that we're not alone.
This year's show, Hearts in Action, runs June 28th and 29th at the Lyceum Theater in downtown San Diego. Milena Spitzer, KPBS News.
And if you plan to hit the beach this weekend, you might want to wait till the afternoon. Regina Miller has details in your weekend forecast.
Well, as we take a look here at a satellite and radar over the last several hours, not really anything to see. We've got quiet conditions, no rainfall anywhere, and clouds are hard to come by. Now, for tonight, those clouds will increase once again here. Temperature of 64 degrees. And as we take a look into Borrego Springs, your temperature for tonight, 74 degrees. Oceanside's at 59. Chula Vista, 61 degrees. We are going to see more in the way of clouds around for tomorrow because of Alvin. Tropical Storm Alvin is a weakening system, but some of those blow-off clouds will be impacting our weather. We will have the low clouds around with the marine layer early, but then some clouds around from Alvin as well. San Diego's at 74 and Escondido 84 degrees. Borrego Springs tops out at 101. And looking ahead here to the weekend, we do have some windy conditions here in parts of the southwest. Now, we have the low clouds. They may break here along the coast, temperature of 76 degrees, but we could see more in the way of clouds still lingering even into the afternoon with Alvin off the coast. And on Sunday, 78 degrees, early clouds will break for sunshine. Low clouds will break for sunshine on Monday as well. On Saturday, inland areas also seeing a mostly cloudy day, 84 degrees. Then we have the marine layer with the low clouds giving way to sunshine on Sunday. Plenty of sunshine on Monday. And in the desert locations, we've got mostly cloudy skies on Saturday, a high of 101. Abundant sunshine here for Sunday and Monday. By Monday, we're at 105 degrees. In the mountain areas, mostly cloudy skies, 75 degrees. Then we've got plenty of sunshine here for Sunday and Monday. Temperature each day, 77 degrees. I'm Regina Miller, KPBS News. Amitha, back to you.
Many Americans are saddled with student loan debt. Many are also struggling to pay their medical bills, even if they have health insurance. In this week's headlines, there are calls to deal with both. Here to talk about these and other topics for this Friday's Business Report is George Belch from SDSU's Fowler School of Business. George, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So we saw this week the first Democratic presidential debates. In advance of those debates, Democratic candidate Bernie Sanders pitched this idea of canceling all student loan debt. What might it do for the economy? How might it act as an economic stimulus?
Well, if you're putting this money into the economy, if I'm paying $300 or $400 a month for paying a student loan, and now I could put that into a car payment, I could put that into a home payment. I might be able to buy my first home. I might be able to upgrade. Clearly, that's going to have the potential for some economic stimulus. We do have to realize you have to pay for it in one way or another, and this whole movement is part of trying to address the income inequality issue. The proposal is to impose a tax on transactions, Wall Street stocks, bonds, derivatives, and that's where the funding would come from it. We have a lot of factors to consider here, but clearly it probably would have a strong economic stimulus effect.
Conversation is really getting started on that one. I want to switch gears dramatically. President Trump this week ordered hospitals and insurance companies to reveal upfront out-of-pocket costs to patients before procedures. How far might this go in actually reducing people's medical expenses?
That's a great question. Clearly what the president's trying to do is introduce more transparency into the system by telling consumers this is what it's going to cost you to go to the doctor, to go to the hospital, to have a certain procedure. This is what the insurance company is going to pay. This is what the out-of-pocket costs are going to be. So it's a step in the right direction, but we will have to see how much that would really have an effect, because we don't know what the patients will do. We don't know how much they really will shop around, and depending on the type of coverage you have, you might just say, well, my plan will cover that anyway. But people with limited health care plans, it might be very valuable to them.
I want to wrap this up with a more local story. So the grocery union, or actually the union representing grocery workers, authorized a strike this week. What's at stake for both sides?
Both sides have a lot at stake here. The United Food and Commercial Workers Union members did have the vote. They authorized the strike. That puts another weapon into the side of the union. I think the stakes are a little bit different this time because consumers have more alternatives. I can now go get groceries at Target and Walmart and Trader Joe's and Aldi, Whole Foods. I can order them on Amazon. And so I think that the grocery stores have to be sitting there saying, boy, what happens here if we don't come to some agreement? They strike, and it's not only them, but all the organized labor people who boycott our stores. And so they don't come in. On the other hand, if you look at the workers are saying, you know, you're giving us a 1 or 2% pay increase, but what we really want in many cases is better health care. We want a better pension plan. So there's a lot at risk. You have to hope that both sides can come to an agreement. The strike is going to hurt both of them, and I think both of them have to be fearful of what's going to happen. Maybe over the next 2 weeks they'll be able to resolve it, but the strike threat will clearly make the grocery stores think more about returning to the negotiating table.
And we have to close it there. George Belch from the Fowler School of Business at SDSU, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Drowning deaths at the border amid an outcry over child detention centers. Democrats running for San Diego mayor spar over NIMBYism, and how election reforms are making some local governments more diverse. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. We are leaving you with a flag raising at San Diego Unified School District headquarters in support of Pride Month. Have a great weekend.